What's up, guys? So today we're actually going to be going over another deep dive, looking into a Pokemon that as soon as this cup got announced, I was kind of like, oh my gosh, this is going to be amazing. So today we're actually going over Alolan Sandslash. So Alolan Sandslash is an Ice and Steel type Pokemon, maxing out with 15 IVs at level 40 at 2432. You can achieve a 1499 at level 25, 0 on attack, 3 on defense, and 1 on stamina. Now I'm sure you can hit exactly 1500 at a lower level, but every combination that I tried, I could only either hit 1499 or like 1502. So I was getting like right around it, but I couldn't fully hit 1500. Now, Alolan Sandslash is actually 32nd in bulk and a 29th in stat product. So that's actually really good because out of 160 participants in the Twilight Cup, being on that top half is definitely where you want to be. This actually means that Alolan Sandslash is actually in the top 25% of the participants in this cup, which is an amazing feat. Alolan Sandslash definitely pulling out some great stats and some great bulk here to be inside the top 25%. Now, as far as potential goes, we do actually hit a 47.72%, so not quite at the 50% mark. Being that you're under the 50% mark doesn't necessarily hurt Alolan Sandslash as much as you would think, considering that our stats are good enough to at least make us in the top 25% out of all of the participants. I tend not to worry too much about this potential stat whenever these two are just so high up out of all the participants this month. So let's actually start going over moves here. So being that we are Ice and Steel type Pokemon, I do have our stab moves highlighted with colors here. Metal Claw and Powder Snow are our two fast moves. Metal Claw actually doing 3 energy per turn and a 2.5 damage per turn. Powder Snow coming in with 4 energy per turn, only doing 2 damage per turn though. So in all of my testing, everything that I've tested, Powder Snow is by far the better move to go with. And when we get into matchups, I'll try to talk a little bit about that, but essentially Powder Snow is definitely the move that I would personally put onto my Alolan Sandslash in this cup. Moving on to our charge moves, we do have Blizzard, Gyro Ball, and Bulldoze. Bulldoze being the only one here that doesn't get a stab bonus, being that it's a ground type move. Blizzard coming in with 75 energy to fire, 130 damage with a 1.73 damage per energy ratio. Gyro Ball being a steel type move, costing 60 energy to fire, doing 80 damage with a 1.33 damage per energy. And lastly, Bulldoze being a ground type move, costing 60, doing 80 damage for a 1.33 energy ratio as well. Now, in all of my testing, Gyro Ball seems to be the most useful charge move on Alolan Sandslash. The reason that I feel this has come up is because Powder Snow is going to be able to tear through a certain section of the meta. And then Gyro Ball actually does really well against the other section of that. And then you have this like odd little section where neither of them are really affected, and you're probably just going to lose to those Pokemon anyways. Now, if you did want to be a madman, if you did want to spend 50,000 dust with 50 candies to get a second move, Bulldoze does prove to be the more efficient move to go with here, only because Bulldoze will help you take down certain Pokemon that you already have a little bit of trouble with. In certain scenarios, having a ground type move can really help in a fire situation. Having a ground type move will really help with certain steel Pokemon like Steelix, and just having that ground coverage can boost your odds a little bit, but in general it's not necessarily needed. You don't have to have it. So in some sense, Powder Snow and Gyro Ball are his best moveset, but if you are going to invest in an Alolan Sandslash, Bulldoze is definitely the better second charge move in my opinion. Now, in all of our deep dive glory, let's go ahead and do our positives and negatives here, starting with the negative side first. So I only have 2 written down for Alolan Sandslash here, and that may say more than the negatives by themselves, but The first negative that we actually have is that Alolan Sandslash is kind of narrow in its purpose. So, talking back about the moves, Powder Snow is really going to help you cover the grass types. It's really going to help you cover a lot of the hard-hitting Pokemon out there because you're going to be able to gain energy so much faster. And then you have a 60 energy charge move, so it's not like super shield busting potential, but it's kind of in the middle of the road. It's definitely not something like Blizzard here with 75 energy, but being that you only have this little package to work with, it really sets you up that you kind of have a defined purpose here. Your purpose is to get under the skin of a lot of grass type Pokemon, ground type Pokemon, and Pokemon of the likes with your Powder Snow here, and then taking out the ice types actually with your Gyro Ball is really where you should focus Alolan Sandslash's usage. So you kind of do have a narrow purpose where you want to target specific Pokemon with it, but if that's what your team is lacking, then Alolan Sandslash is an amazing Pokemon at doing those things. The next negative thing that we actually have is that Alolan Sandslash does have some particularly bad weaknesses. So you're actually going to be weak to ground, which you're just going to take double damage to, but you actually have two quad weaknesses, and they're kind of big, so fire and fighting. Earlier in our deep dive journey here, we talked a little bit about Raichu, and Raichu having that Brick Break move really can put him in a favorable position up against Alolan Sandslash, only because Alolan Sandslash has a quad weakness to fighting. So it's kind of an interesting thing. So that's kind of another thing that really pushes Alolan Sandslash into a more narrow position, because being weak to fighting really means that you can't go up against certain Pokemon like Raichu, and being weak to fire really means that you're going to suffer against Charizard, you're going to suffer against Camerupt if people are bringing Camerupt this month. Manectric can also give you a little bit of an issue with its access to a fire move as well, so you kind of have to pick and choose where you're actually going to use Alolan Sandslash, because his purpose is narrower and narrower the more that you look into him. Moving on to our positives, so I actually have two positives down as well for Alolan Sandslash here. Our first one is that he's relatively easy to get, and he's also pretty cheap in that sense as well. So being that he's going to hit $14.99 at 25, basically you can go after some 7K eggs, grab an Alolan Sandslash, and almost evolve it and be right where you need to be. You may have to invest like 1 or 2 power-ups into it, but being that it's going to max out at around 25 with horrible IVs, of course, you know, you're not going to be able to achieve 25. You're probably going to be like 22.5, 23, and you'll be right there under 1500 with decent IVs. So it's relatively cheap to invest in, and if you needed to get this second move like I was talking about earlier, the dust and the candies that you save powering it up, you might actually could invest those into moves. So that wouldn't be too bad of an idea. Now, our next positive that we actually have for Alolan Sandslash is that his resistances are just off the chart. Being Ice and Steel type, the ones that I have written down, which I thought were the outliers here, he's quad resisting Ice. So that's what really gives him a huge boost up against certain matchups in this meta. The fact that he quad resists Ice, he can really put out some damage, plus he has moves that are super effective towards Ice in the long term. So it really sets him up to just be really good. He does also have a 2x resistance to both grass and flying. He's actually going to be able to resist some of the grass type damage that the big grass type attackers are throwing out. Plus, he actually has a really good matchup against Tropius. Considering that Tropius is going to be using both grass and flying type moves, he does really well against Tropiuses in this cup. So that actually brings us to our matchups. So if you actually go on pvpoke.com, you can do a multi-battle system where you take a Pokemon and you fight them up against every possible Pokemon in the Tempest Cup. You can actually see how well your Pokemon will perform against other Pokemon inside the cup. Doing that with Alolan Sandslash. Now, something to keep in mind here, I did have Powder Snow, Gyro Ball, and Bulldoze, so I did have both moves unlocked, and there were no shields. No shields in this situation. Alolan Sandslash won 64.4% of the time. That's big. That's a lot of wins. Now, he either flat out lost or he tied against the other 35.6%. So he does have a favorable matchup against all of the Pokemon in the Tempest Cup. So he's definitely not something that you should be sleeping on necessarily. He actually may be something good to add to your team if you're looking for something that Alolan Sandslash specializes in. Now, as far as the matchups that I put Alolan Sandslash up against, I take the top 10 bulkiest Pokemon and I throw Alolan Sandslash into the mix to see how well it does against these top 10 bulk Pokemon. So we're actually going to be losing to Steelix, Dugong, but it was actually a really close match. Regice, Lapras, and Lantern. We actually do lose to a lot of those. And Lapras probably would have been a different story if it was using legacy moves, but basically Lapras was geared to do neutral damage towards Alolan Sandslash, and that's where he started to fall apart. But a lot of those Pokemon were chosen with best movesets up against Alolan Sandslash, so in the worst of odds, you lose to the 5 bulkiest Pokemon in the Cup. Now, on the flip side, to actually win in these matchups, you actually win against Tropius, Lugia, Jumpluff, Altaria, and Claydol. So Tropius and Altaria are the two big ones there, because those are going to be huge threats to everybody in this Cup. They're going to be big. Altaria being quad weak to ice, you really have a favorable matchup with Powder Snow here, and with Tropius being quad weak to ice, you actually have a pretty big matchup here as well. So you're going to be resisting a lot of damage from both of those matchups, but it really does go to show that Alolan Sandslash can't actually hold its own. I would like to know what you guys think of Alolan Sandslash. He's very, very interesting. Unfortunately, he does have kind of a narrow path on where he should be put, but if that's what your team is lacking, like I said before, I don't think there's any shame in going with Alolan Sandslash at all. I have mine. He's powered up. He needs some move changes, but he's getting there. But yeah. So that is actually going to be it for today, guys. I really do appreciate everybody that watches these videos. They are super fun to do, and it's super cool to see your guys' feedback from these videos. If you guys have a Pokemon that you would like a deep dive on, please let me know down in the comments below. I'm going to be trying to do a all meta week this week, so Alolan Sandslash is kind of kicking it off because he's kind of meta, I guess. But I do have plans to actually go over Tropius, Abomasnow, Lapras, all of the top tier metas that everybody's looking at to kind of give you guys an idea on what you should be expecting when it comes to these Pokemon in your own Tempest Cups. So, thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you like to like videos, you can do that. If you don't, you can be that guy. Otherwise, let me know what you have to say down in those comments down below. And until our next video, I will catch you guys then.